My Cherie Amour by the great Stevie Wonder, released in 1969, is one of the greatest love songs of all time. In fact, it might just be a perfect song. The simplicity of the harmony, the colorful melody, the relatable lyrics, and the exquisite performance make this song a masterpiece. The first thing I do when I listen to the song is figure out what key we're in, and it sounds to me like we're in D flat major. We've got the one chord, which is D flat major, and that moves up a fourth to G flat. And then we go up another fourth to C flat major, before finally coming down to the 5 chord A flat, first as A flat sus, and then as A flat 7. And then we go back and repeat it. This is more or less a 1, 4, and 5 song. These are the classic chords that we heard all the time from rock and roll and other popular music of the time. In the industry, alongside Stevie, was Ray Charles, and Ray would write these 1, 4, and 5 songs all day long. If we switch here from a piano sound over to a whirly, we can hear how Ray might use those chords over a song like What Did I Say? I never have really been able to nail that riff. I guess that's close enough. But if we compare these 1, 4, and 5 chords from Ray Charles to My Cherie Amour, you almost don't even recognize them as being the same progression. Stevie's chords are just so much more sophisticated than basic triads or dominant 7th chords that we were hearing all over the industry at the time. He was pulling in the kind of rich jazz chords that we would have heard from jazz standards in the 50s, full of colorful extensions and dissonant chord alteration. I've heard a lot of bands cover this song over the years, and keyboard players really struggle to get the right sound. And I think a big part of that is because of guitar tab websites. See, if we look at chords from one of these sites, you get kind of two different results. On the one hand, you get a simple representation of these chords, but without any more information, they just don't sound right. They're missing all those jazzy colors. But on the other hand, we have tabs that look more like this, with these very weird looking chords, like an F minor 7 over flat 5. That means with a B natural in the bass. This chord is just wrong, by the way. Maybe they meant F augmented over B natural. That's what I hear when I listen to it. But as weird as this is to read, this is actually more in the right direction. These tabs are made for guitar and bass players who would play different things at this point, right? The guitar player would play the F augmented chord when the bass player would play the B natural underneath it. And when you put those two together, you get this sound. As jazz players, we might see this same chord written as C flat 7 with a sharp 11, but that's a pretty advanced chord to get our head around though. So the F augmented over B could be more practical. I've gotten a little ahead of myself though, as this chord doesn't happen until later in the chorus. So let's come back to it in a second. I actually think Stevie may have been thinking about chords more in this way, with the chord and the bass separate, because let's look at how he voices them. The D flat major chord is actually this F minor triad in the right hand with a D flat in the bass. We would call that D flat major 7. And then we have the 4 chord G flat, which has an E major triad on top. And this gives us a G flat sus chord. And then we have our C flat chord, which is a passing chord before we go to the 5. And this has C flat in the bass and an E flat minor chord on top, which makes this just a C flat major 7 chord. I call this C flat major as a proud card-carrying member of the jazz elite, but most of my friends would call this B major 7, which I think is totally cool. We could sit here all day long and debate what the proper way is to notate these chords, but who really cares? All that matters is that if you really want to cover this song and get the authentic Stevie Wonder sound, you've got to voice these chords with these triad shapes on top. The way that Stevie plays these chords with these triads in the right hand create really smooth voice leading. The chords in the chorus are even more fun, but before we jump into that, I just stumbled across something pretty interesting that I've never heard before. While this song didn't release until he was 19 years old, Stevie actually wrote the song 3 years earlier while he was attending the Michigan School for the Blind. And as he tells the story, Stevie says he was pursuing a girl named Marcia that he was interested in.
What's your name? She said, Marcia. I said, Marcia, if you look anything as good as yourself, maybe we can meet up with show. She said, no, I can't come on. I'm not coming on town, Steve. I said a couple more times. So then she comes to the hotel. She brings her mother. Marcia, guess what? She said, what? I said, I want a song about you. Backstage at the piano, and I'll play it for you. So, get to the piano, so I'm gonna play the song for her. So I said, so what do you think? She said, yeah, that's cute. I said, you ever get a kiss? She said, I know you're not, man.
Now that proposal didn't really work out for Stevie, but as it would happen a few years later, Berry Gordy, who was the founder of Tamla Records, recognized the potential of this song. And he had Motown songwriters Henry Cosby and Sylvia Moy help Stevie polish up this song for release. As part of that, Sylvia suggested giving the song a French-sounding title, much like the Beatles had done successfully with Michel, and thus My Cherie Amour was born. Anyway, the chorus briefly modulates to the key of G-flat, and it works its way back home to D-flat through the circle of fifths. And this is where we encounter that wild C-flat 7 sharp 9 flat 5 chord. We start here on G-flat major, and then we move up to A-flat sus. The melody turns this A-flat sus into an A-flat 7 chord by emphasizing the G-flat. This A-flat 7 is the 5 chord in our home key of D-flat, and it really wants to resolve us back there, but Stevie doesn't let it. Instead, he takes us to an even more dissonant place, this C-flat 7. Dominant chords often like to resolve down a fifth, but they can also resolve down a half step. And that's what Stevie does here. He takes us from C-flat 7 down a half step to B-flat 7. B-flat 7 is the 6th chord in our home key of D-flat, and so we can use a very common turnaround progression to bring us back there, just around the circle of fifths. We've heard turnarounds like this in a million tunes, but Stevie takes it to the next level. His melody keeps an F natural on top of all the chords throughout the whole progression. On G-flat, the F is the major 7. On A-flat sus, it's the 6th. On C-flat, it's the flat 5. On E-flat, it's the 9. And finally, on A-flat dominant 7, it's the 13th. In every one of these chords, Stevie has used the most colorful note as the melody note, and he's somehow figured out how to make that same note work across all of these chords. Oh, and just look at the voicing here on the last chord. It's this A-flat dominant 7th chord with the F on top, and the way that he's voiced this creates a minor 9th, one of the most dissonant intervals in all of Western music. You would be hard-pressed to find a chord this dissonant that just begs to be resolved back home more than this one. So back we go through the verse and the chorus a second time. But as we come around and approach that fancy A-flat 7 chord again, Stevie swaps it out for an A7 chord instead, and he uses that A7 chord as the 5 to modulate the whole song up a half step to D major. By the way, whatever happened to key changes? It seems like in the last 10 years nobody wants to change keys anymore. My favorite key change of all time is this one by Jacob Collier. You should watch this video next to learn how he does it using only one note.